All right, so for problem 3, we have our string checker interface. This describes the classes that check if strings are valid according to some criterion. In order to implement this interface, we need to make sure that we have some method called isValid that accepts a string and returns a Boolean. And we're going to create a class called CodeWordChecker that's going to be checking these strings based on some parameters. And I actually am going to have two different constructors. I'll have one constructor that has two integers and a string. And then I'm also going to have another constructor that's just going to have a string, and in that case, I'm going to be defaulting the minimum and maximum lengths to 6 and 20 instead of explicitly describing them as we did here. So let's go through a couple of examples. Here, I'm given the low and the high, and this is the bad string. This is the thing I don't want. So anything that's between 5 and 8 characters inclusive is perfectly fine as long as it doesn't have this $sign. So notice happy is 5 characters, that's fine. Happy with a $sign, that's not good because it has the bad character, so that's false. Code is too short, it's only 4 characters long, it's less than the 5 we specified, so that's going to be bad. And happy code is too long. That's the 9, which is too long for us. So that's going to be bad as well. Now, I also have the other constructor that only has a string. And in this situation, my low is going to be 6 and my high is going to be 20. So anything between 6 and 20 characters inclusive is fine, as long as I don't have lowercase p, lowercase a, lowercase s, lowercase s. So here in my pass, this is perfectly fine because it is 6 units in length, and I have capital P instead of lowercase p. It doesn't exactly match, so we're fine. This is good. Here, this PASS exactly matches, and that's why it's bad, even though it's between 6 and 20 characters in length. Happy's too short. It's only 5 characters in length, so that's bad. And millions, billions, trillions. Yeah, 1 quadrillion, well, that's too long because that's 4, 8, 12, 16, 21 characters. 1 character too long, darn. So when we're writing this class, we need to make sure, number 1, that we implement this interface. We need to make sure we have a method called isValid. And we need to make sure that we have one of each of these constructors. And because of this, I'm going to need to keep track of these two integers, whether they're given to us or whether they're our default values. And I'm going to have to keep track of this string. So I'm going to have some private variables in this class as well. So it's going to be a pretty complicated class. So let's go ahead and write it. So I'm going to say public class CodeWordChecker implements string checker. Now, for our purposes, we're going to have two private ints, which I'm going to call low and high. And I'm going to have a private string, which I'm going to call bad. And then I'm going to have two constructors. One constructor, public CodeWordChecker. I'm going to have an int low, int high, and int bad. And so what happens is my constructor, the purpose of it is to fill in these instance variables. So I'm going to say that low is going to get low, high is going to get high, and bad is going to get bad. And that's that constructor. All that I'm doing is I'm assigning my parameters to my instance variables. I also have to have the constructor CodeWordChecker with just a string. And in this case, we're going to assign low as 6. We're going to say high is 20. And we're going to say that bad is going to get bad. All right, so the only thing I have left to do is I actually need to implement string checker, which means I need to write a Boolean function called isValid, which is passing a string called str. And I'm going to go through and check str. If it's too short, I'm going to have to kick out a false. If it's too long, I'm going to have to kick out a false. If it has anything in this, if it has this bad string in it, I'm going to have to kick out a false. Otherwise, I'm going to return true. So, first thing I'm going to have to do is check if str.length is less than low, then I want to return false. If str.length is greater than high, then I want to return false. And if str.index of bad is not equal to -1. Remember that -1 is what I get if it doesn't show up anywhere. So if I don't get a -1, I know that it did show up somewhere. If that's true, then I want to return false. Now, if I made it through all 3 of these lines, then I'm good. And so at this point, I'm going to return true. And we're good. Notice that I've got the instance variables to keep track of length. I've got the instance variable to keep track of what's a bad string that I don't want to have. I have both constructors, one where the constants are given to me for length, one where I have to use the default of 6 and 20. And then I check for all 3 conditions. If I'm too short, if I'm too long, or if I contain bad text. So that's problem 3.